It is a question that drifts towards me often, a gentle echo from those who have glimpsed what they call an awakening. Why does the world feel so still? Why has the great rush of things lost its urgency? The old currents of ambition, you see, no longer pull with the same force. The landscapes of future dreams have faded, and this is spoken with a note of quiet alarm, as if a vital spring in the clockwork of their being has unwound, as if the awakening was a misstep in the cosmic dance, an error, they feel, that must somehow be put right. But let us look at this a little closer. For what if this supposed problem is not a problem at all? What if it is the most natural state of affairs, like a river finally reaching the sea? You see, what our busy world calls motivation is often just a very elegant form of escape, a flight from something. So, let's ask, what was the engine behind that former urgency? Was it not fear? A deep, quiet fear of insufficiency, of fading into the silence, of being without a name, the fear of being a ripple that leaves no trace upon the water. Consider this for a moment. All that great striving, all that endless climbing, all of those destinations you charted for yourself were built upon a single shaky foundation, the assumption that you, in this very moment, were incomplete, a draft in need of constant revision, that you had to become someone else, that this present reality was something to be fixed, something to be improved upon, a place to depart from. You were living inside a dream. The dream that you are a separate ego, a lonely island that must shout to prove it exists, that you had to earn your place in the universe, to justify the simple, marvelous fact of your own being. But then the dream shifted. You began to wake up, and in that waking, you saw the nature of the game. It may have been a flash of lightning, or the slow, quiet dawn of a new morning. You saw that the whole arrangement was a kind of divine play, not a cruel trick, you understand, but a wonderful game of cosmic hide-and-seek, and you discovered that you are not, in truth, a lonely fragment of awareness, temporarily sealed within a vessel of skin and bone. You are not a stranger here. You are the entire universe, playing at being you for a little while. Now, when this light begins to dawn, even as a flicker on the horizon, what becomes of all those frantic, fear-based motivations? They simply dissolve. They must, for they were castles built on the shifting sands of a false idea. The idea of your separation, of your lack, of your fundamental incompleteness. And once you see through that, the whole grand, serious structure of ambition reveals itself to be utterly and delightfully absurd. Doesn't it just? Imagine for a moment you are in a darkened room, completely lost within the dream of a film. The hero faces a great peril, and you find yourself on the very edge of your seat, a willing captive. Your heart dances to the rhythm of the drama. Your palms are damp. You are moved to see him find his way through, to witness his triumph. But then someone flicks a switch, the light floods in, and you suddenly remember, ah, yes, it is only a play of light and shadow, merely actors moving across a screen. No one is in any real danger. Now, can you return to that same state of complete absorption? Can you care with the same intensity as before? Well, of course you can't. You have seen behind the curtain, and in a way, this is precisely what has happened to you. The lights have been turned on, so to speak, and now you sit there, puzzling over why you can no longer lose yourself in the movie, why you cannot summon that old familiar intensity of concern and striving you once knew. And so my question to you is, why on earth would you want to? You see, there is a common and curious misunderstanding about this spiritual awakening business. People imagine that it is supposed to fashion you into some kind of perfected being, more successful, more driven, altogether more capable. They believe enlightenment means you will simply become better at playing the game of life. But that, my friend, is to miss the point of waking up entirely. Awakening is to see that life is not a contest to be won, but a magnificent dance. And you are invited to join the music, or not, just as you please. Let me put this another way. Before awakening, you were like a person who believed it was their solemn duty to make waves upon the ocean. You were splashing about with great effort, trying to create the most impressive disturbance, attempting to leave your signature upon the water. But after the awakening, you realize that you are the ocean. The waves are already happening. They do not need your anxiety to urge them on. They arise and fall by themselves with a natural and effortless grace. This is what the old Taoist masters called Wu Wei, which we might call actionless action or effortless doing. It is not that you become passive or lazy. Rather, you simply stop trying to force things. You stop pushing the river. You allow the current of life to flow through you, rather than constantly attempting to steer it for your own private advantage. Now, here is where the pattern becomes interesting. You see, motivation, as we generally conceive of it, is inextricably tied to desire. And desire is always born from a perceived sense of lack. You desire only that which you believe you do not have. You are motivated to chase the thing you imagine will finally complete you, the thing that will fulfill you and make you whole. But awakening reveals the great secret. You were never incomplete to begin with. You are, in this very moment, already whole. There is no piece of you missing. Nothing need be added to make you worthy. And this very realization can feel like the ground dissolving beneath you. It can be profoundly unsettling, for the entire architecture of your life up to this point has been a grand pursuit of a future fulfillment. Your work, the faces you love, the games you play, the mountains you climb, all of it was a strategy to fill a perceived void, a fundamental hollowness you felt at your center. And then, the great joke is revealed. There is no void to fill. The emptiness itself is the fullness of being. The silence is the music. And so, quite naturally, the old motivations simply fade away. All your former strivings were a kind of running away from yourself, an attempt to become someone other than who you are. But once you have glimpsed your true nature, that particular game loses its captivating illusion. It is like trying to persuade one who has discovered they are a king to continue scrambling desperately for copper coins. For what reason? What would be the point of such a game? But, and this is the subtle turning point, this does not mean you become inert. It is not an invitation to lie still and watch the dust settle. What it means is that your life is no longer a reaction to fear and lack. Your actions begin to arise spontaneously, flowing from the wellspring of your being, not the franticness of your doing. Consider a flower. Is a flower motivated to bloom? Does it carry goals and ambitions for its petals? Does it awaken with the sun and set an intention for how much fragrance it will release today? Of course not. It simply blossoms. It is in its nature to blossom. And in just this way, when you are no longer obstructed by the illusion of being, a separate ego that must constantly fight for its own justification, you simply flow into what is natural. Not because you ought to, not to gain some future prize, but because the action is an authentic expression of what you are. This is the great paradox where so many stumble. They awaken and expect a great surge of purpose, a sudden crystal-clear map of their destiny, a new fire to achieve great things. Instead, there is a quiet space, a sense of being adrift, and in this lack of the old drive, they panic, believing something has gone terribly wrong, but nothing has gone wrong at all. What has occurred is that the artificial engine, the one that ran on the fuel of fear and separateness, has been seen for the ghost it always was. And when the striving ceases, a vast space opens, a profound silence, a deep stillness. And so, we rush to fill this beautiful emptiness with the clutter of new goals, of fresh ambitions, and even new spiritual games. We turn the very idea of awakening into another prize to be won, another mask for the self to wear. Ah, we say, I am no longer merely John or Jane. I am the awakened John, the enlightened Jane. But don't you see? This is simply the ego in a new costume. It is the same old game of separation and effort, merely dressed in the fine robes of spiritual language. And so the real question becomes, can you abide in the emptiness? Can you rest in that quiet space where the drive has gone, without rushing to mend it? Without trying to summon a false enthusiasm for a play that no longer holds your fascination? Can you allow yourself to be nobody on a journey to nowhere and find a profound peace in that? This, you see, is where the true unfolding begins. And I use the word unfolding carefully, for it is not work in the common sense. It is more a process of allowing, a gentle allowing of yourself to be without a grand purpose, allowing your own being to exist without justification, allowing the great river of life to flow through you without your constant meddling and management. For you see, what we so often forget is that the universe is not a static object. It is not some lifeless machine that must be pushed and prodded into motion. It is alive, a dynamic dance, constantly creating itself. And you are not some separate observer of this cosmic play. You are the play itself. And when you finally cease trying to direct the whole show, when you stop pushing your small will against the current of reality, something quite marvelous occurs. The boundless intelligence of life itself begins to express through you. But this requires a deep letting go, a profound trust. A trust that the flow of life knows its own course, that the universe will not simply let you slip away into the void just because you have stopped fussing over every tiny detail of your existence. And this, perhaps, is the most difficult dance for the Western mind to learn, for we have been taught, from our very first breath, that we must make things happen, that the world will grind to a halt unless I am there to push the levers. But the wisdom of the East offers a rather different song. In the path of the Tao, for instance, there is this marvelous notion of a universe that governs itself, that it unfolds in spontaneous harmony, with no need for a central planner, no grand controller at the helm. Consider the tree. It needs no supervisor to instruct it in the art of growing. The bird consults no manual to weave its nest. And in this very same way, you do not need the anxious ego to tell you how to live. Life understands how to live itself through you. Now I can almost hear the objection forming in the mind. But Alan, you might say, if I release this drive, I will drift into idleness. I will accomplish nothing of worth. I will simply waste the precious time I have. This objection arises from the belief that human beings are, at their core, lazy and must be whipped into the dance of life. But is this truly so? Look at a child before the world has imprinted its rules upon them. Are they unmotivated? On the contrary, they are a fountain of pure energy and endless curiosity. They need no external reason to play, to explore, to create. It is their fundamental nature. What occurs, you see, is that this natural, flowing spontaneity becomes buried under the weight of education, by the demands of society, by the ceaseless whisper that you must be productive, that you must be useful, successful, that you must prove your worth just to be here. And so, we build this clever artificial system of motivation, this kind of inner taskmaster who is forever pushing, forever judging, and never, ever allowing you the simple grace of being. A spiritual awakening is the dismantling of this inner tyrant. And yes, when it recedes, you feel a lack of motivation, but only to continue playing that peculiar game of self-pursuit. What emerges from the stillness, if you can be patient with it, is a vitality that is far more natural, far more authentic. It is not the frantic energy of one running from the void, from the great fear of meaninglessness, but the calm, deep current of a person who is finally at home in the universe, who is at one with the rhythm of existence. Let me offer a small reflection. When I was a younger man, I was possessed by a tremendous ambition. I wanted to etch my name into the world, to be seen, to become a somebody of importance. I poured my being into study, into my work, into the flowing of ink onto a page, and there was an energy to it all. Oh, yes. But it was the energy of a deep thirst. I was running, constantly running, attempting to outpace the shadow of my own inadequacy. Then, through the wisdom of Eastern thought and the quiet work of turning inward, something gave way. The urgency fell from me. And for a season, I felt precisely what you may be feeling in this moment. Adrift, without a compass, wondering what the great point of it all was. But I learned to sit with it. I simply stopped trying to mend it, or to run from it. And in that stillness, I saw that action continued. Words still arose. The day's work was still done. But it no longer sprang from that place of desperate, anxious clinging. It flowed from, well, it is a place that escapes all names, from a deep silence, you might say, from a luminous emptiness, from the simple music of the act itself. For its own being, not for the future it might build. This is the heart of what the Zen masters knew. When they spoke of chopping wood and carrying water, before enlightenment, you chop wood, you carry water. After enlightenment, you chop wood, you carry water. The outward form of the dance is the same, but the inner feeling of the dancer is utterly new. Before this awakening, you chop wood because it is your duty, because it is a task to be completed, because you are striving to be a worthy person or reach a certain end. After the awakening, you chop wood because you are chopping wood. That is the whole of it. No hidden purpose, no self-conscious motive, just the pure unfolding of the moment. And here is the marvelous secret. When you act from this place of spontaneous being, rather than from a mind of forced intention, your actions gain a profound clarity and grace. They are no longer clouded by the ghosts of the mind, all the fears and wants and worries. They become clean, direct, and perfectly tuned to what is. It is like the difference between a muddied pond and a clear mirror. Both are water, but only one reflects the sky without distortion. So, what is one to do with this seeming absence of will you feel? Nothing. You do absolutely nothing with it. You allow it to be. You cease the game of self-improvement, of fixing yourself, of motivating the ego. You let this quiet season unfold in its own time. Because what is truly happening is a reorganization of your entire being, from the very ground up. The old patterns of thought, the old software, are being gently uninstalled, so to speak, and a new, more spacious awareness is being written. But this process cannot be forced. It has its own tide, its own silent rhythm. And in this space between, be gentle with yourself. Do not compare the being you are now to the ghost you were, or the phantom you imagine you should be. Do not try to force yourself back into old containers that no longer hold your shape. Instead, become curious. Watch what is happening, as if watching clouds drift across the sky. Notice what pulls your awareness without any effort. What makes you feel the pulse of life? What brings a sense of wonder or a quiet smile? You may find that the river of your life has changed its course entirely. The great mountains of your former ambitions may now seem like ripples in a quiet pond. And the simple texture of a leaf, once ignored, might now hold the entire universe. This is the natural flow of things, for you are not the same person who began the journey. How could you expect the old maps to guide you through this new undiscovered country? There is a wonderful current in the stream of Zen thought, a story about a master who, after his great awakening, was asked what he did. He said, "When hunger arises, I eat. When I am weary, I sleep." The one who asked was, of course, quite baffled by this. "But doesn't everyone do that?" The master replied, "Ah, but no, when most people eat, their minds are wrestling with 1,000 other things. When they sleep, they are dreaming anxious dreams of tomorrow. But when I eat, there is only the eating. When I sleep, there is only the sleeping." This is the quality of being that emerges when the ghost of striving fades away. Not a life of frantic achievement or the endless pursuit of doing, but a life of pure presence, of profound wholeness, of being a silent mirror for whatever is happening now. And here we find a wonderful paradox, for this way of being often gives rise to a creativity that far exceeds the efforts of a forced will, because it is not scattered and at war with itself. It is a unified, flowing, and natural dance. But whether this dance leads to grand creations or not is entirely beside the point. The point is that you are no longer living in the shadow of lack and fear. You are living from the deep well of stillness and peace. And from that silent center, whatever unfolds is the perfect blossoming of the present moment. So do not be troubled by what seems to be a lack of motivation. Do not try to whip the river into flowing faster. Do not feel the burden of goals that no longer sing to you. Instead, rest in the deep recognition that brought you to this shore in the first place, the quiet understanding that you are already whole, already complete, already home. All the rest will orchestrate itself. The universe, after all, has managed its cosmic dance for billions of years without your anxious help. It will continue to manage, and you are not separate from that magnificent intelligence. You are the way the universe is managing itself, right here, right now, in this very form. Trust that. Trust the self that you are. Trust life. And in that deep letting go, you may just discover that what you took to be a lack of motivation was actually the quiet arrival of something far more profound. Not the hurried dance of avoidance, but the deep stillness of presence. And this very stillness, which may seem like a silent pool, is the very wellspring where all true and meaningful movement begins its journey.